So I didn't get a whole lot of footage of the sensory bin, but here's what we had. Again, we had our tea lights, bingo markers, spoons, fire trucks. So it's Friday afternoon. On Monday, I start out, I have 7 classes Mondays, so it's my busy day. So I'm gonna go ahead and separate out the sensory bin now, because I'm not gonna have time Monday to do this. One of the questions I get asked sometimes is, how do you do it? How do you control 14 kids at a time, where you walk away happy and smiling and the kids are happy and they want to be there? I get comments a lot from parents that, my kid didn't want to go to school today. I actually got a comment from one of my parents today. Their kid didn't want to go to school, but then the mom said, but you have STEAM with Celeste this afternoon. And that motivated the kid to want to go to school. And I get that comment a lot. It's not uncommon for me to hear that the best thing about one of these kids' experiences is science. And I believe the reason is not because it's science. Some kids, science is not for everybody, and I understand that. History is not for me. I don't get history. English is fine for me. I'm not super crazy about it. I have a hard time with reading comprehension. Is really difficult for me, and it always has been. So taking English was hard for me, but science kind of came naturally. So it's not necessarily about the subject that I'm teaching. It's about what message I give the kids. So the message that I give to kids is that they are safe when they're in my space, they're loved, and they don't get in trouble with me. I don't believe in punitive punishments. That means I don't believe in timeout. I don't believe that it works. I don't believe in taking away privileges. I don't believe in grounding, or at least old school punishments that I was raised in. I don't believe that they work, and I don't believe they're effective. Specifically things like timeout. And I think that timeout is still widely used by parents, and it's widely used in classrooms too. I don't think that it works, because think about your own childhood. You go back in time, think about when you were a kid, and if your parents used timeout with you, remember the feeling of being in timeout. I remember being in timeout very upset, angry, mad, isolated, alone, feeling like I am the worst person in the world, feeling full of shame. But if you ask me what I did to get into timeout, I have no idea. I don't know what happened, because timeout works against how our brains work. So brains have 3 states. We have our survival state, which happens in our brainstem. We have a rational state that happens in our prefrontal cortex, and our emotional state that happens in our limbic system, somewhere in the middle. And when a kid is in trouble, their fight or flight system goes on, and there's typically 4 things that you'll see. All of us have fight or flight responses. So you can have usually a combination of 2. You can have freeze, which is where you just freeze and you don't do anything. You can have fight, which is where you fight back, you argue. Fawn, which is where you try to please the person that you're in trouble with. And flight, which is you run away from the problem. So my 2 fight or flight responses is freeze and run. Those are my top 2. I always freeze or run whenever my fight or flight gets activated. So you might think that timeout is working with kids that have freeze or freeze responses because they don't do the thing anymore. It's because they've shut down. It's because they froze and they are in fight or flight. But the reason we don't remember what actually happened, and the reason we never learned from our mistakes, hey, go think about what you did. Well, I don't know what I did. So how can I think about what I did if I don't know what I did? So we end up associating emotions with isolating yourself. So if I have big emotions, I need to be alone. I can't be around other people because I can't process. Because when I was having big emotions as a kid, that's when my fight or flight would get activated the most, because that's when I would get in trouble the most. And the place where learning happens in our brains is in our prefrontal cortex, is right up here. And if you're in fight or flight, this part of your brain is offline, you can't learn. So if you're in timeout, you physiologically cannot learn anything. You cannot learn from your mistakes, and you're not going to know what you did wrong or how to fix it, because instead of learning, you're just afraid of your parent or your caregiver. And now instead of learning from the situation, you're learning to be afraid of them or to hide from them. So you still do the thing that you got in trouble for, but you get really good about hiding it. So now you have kids who their default response is, I didn't do anything. And they lie to your face, and you're like, why are you lying to me? I know you did. Because instinctually, you've trained them to be afraid to tell the truth. Because that fear response of getting in trouble is bigger than the fear response of consequences from lying. So I don't do timeout in my classroom. So if a kid messes up, they're not going to go to timeout because it doesn't work. It doesn't teach them anything. So what do I do instead? Well, a lot of it is how I communicate with the kids. If I stay regulated when things are going crazy around me, the kids stay regulated. So I've armed myself with tools. A lot of it is preventative, because if I don't put the things in to prevent situations from happening, then I'm going to end up in a situation where I've lost control of 14 kids, and now I'm overwhelmed, and now I'm going to lash out and scream. Because I have been in situations like that with no tools and no support, where I do yell, I do raise my voice, and then things get worse. And then I'm the one that looks bad because now I'm an adult yelling out at all these kids, but it's because I didn't have the tools and I didn't know what else to do. And when we are in that fight or flight response, when we lose control, we lose composure, we default to what our parents taught us. And that's the learning that happens. You default when you're in fight or flight, what are your parents doing at this time? So that you, without even thinking about it, you just repeat the things that you knew were wrong that were happening to you. So I take that philosophy into the classroom, and kids don't get in trouble with me. There are situations where, more extreme situations, where I do get very firm, and they know. But because I'm really mellow all the time, when I do raise my voice, they know that it's a really big problem because I never do raise my voice. So now the times that I do, it's more impactful. And it's also more intentional. I don't raise my voice randomly. I do it with intent when it's necessary. But it's usually not necessarily because it doesn't escalate. So some of the tools that I have is, how do I communicate with these kids, right? So if I have a kiddo that just took something out of somebody's hand, I'm not going to say, hey, give it back. Because yelling and raising my voice like that isn't going to teach them what to do when they need something. So I'm going to say something like, did you like it when that got taken from you? Oh, you could say, can I have that back, please? I wasn't done yet. And I'll always address the victim first, because I want to empower the victim to speak up for themselves first. Because that then teaches the person that is the perpetrator, it teaches them, oh, I didn't get the attention that I wanted? Let me think. So it de-escalates them without putting the focus on them, which was what, when you have a kid that is actively, repeatedly taking something or having the repeated behavior things, a lot of the times it's because they're in fight or flight all the time, and they don't know, they're not thinking, they're not learning. Typically you see that happening from homes that are more dysregulated, or homes that don't have schedules, or places where parents are yelling a lot or using punishments, or even in domestic violence situations. You have kids that are either incredibly dysregulated and go into rages, or the silent kids. And I was one of the silent kids because I grew up in domestic violence. So I also am very mindful of where these kids coming from. And I know what triggers me. And I do a lot of research about narcissism and about abuse. So I'm very careful in the way I communicate, because if a kid is in an abusive home, is in a situation where parents are yelling and screaming, I know what not to say and what to say to make sure that I don't unintentionally activate their fight or flight. And then I do notice that they're in fight or flight, I can de-escalate them pretty quickly, because I'm very sensitive to emotional states. I think that some people, you could call that being an empath. I don't really know why I don't like telling people I'm empathic, because I just don't think that it means anything. But because I was traumatized as a kid, I'm really good at picking up on emotional states as a way to arm myself and make sure I'm protected against other people's hurtful emotional states, I guess. So even if they're saying something hurtful to me, in the moment I try as much as I can to not get offended, to not get triggered, and to not take it personally, because I know that kids don't intend to hurt other people. That's definitely like a sociopathic thing that develops later in adult or teenage years. But the kids that I work with, 4, 3, 2-year-olds, when they say something hurtful, it's because it's something that they learned and they have no idea that it's hurtful. They just know that that's what you say when you're upset, because that's what they're learning. And usually that stuff does come from home. So I guess big picture, how do I keep calm, cool, and collected when I'm in a group of 14 kids and it's getting a little bit chaotic? Well, lots of deep breathing, keeping myself regulated, and having fun. If I get silly and I do silly things that catch them off guard, they're going to be a lot better at listening to me, because now it's interesting. So I try to make myself interesting so they pay attention, and plan projects that they're going to have a lot of fun with so they have something to look forward to. If they want to be here, then they'll be listeners. If they don't want to be here, they're not going to listen to me. So I make it fun so they want to be here. And it works because I get a lot of good feedback. And this is everybody's favorite class. Everybody talks about science with Miss Celeste. It's so much fun. It's our favorite class ever. And it's because I keep things engaging. I keep it fun. And I help keep everybody, including myself, regulated. So I keep things fun. I keep things interesting. And I let each kid know that they are important to me. I say their name. I have routines and rituals. So high fives in the hall, funny jokes, silly voices, and I try to just make it memorable. And then they have a good experience with science. And then later as an adult, hopefully it changes their mind and they have a little bit less of a struggle going into the science classes, because they had a good experience with it when they were little.